Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Marshall J. Hartman. We welcome those of you here and those of you who are online. Rabbi Norman Lewison will be officiating. Just as a last and gentle reminder, please be sure that your phones have been turned off or to the silent mode.
I think I'm distanced enough from the people here. I will take off my mask. And I'm going to suggest that those who will come up and speak from the pulpit do that as well if you're just yourself up here. The presence of the number of people here is just a small indication of the specialness of Marshall Hartman. He lived a long and full and accomplishing life, and we're going to share that fully. So I'm suggesting that you kind of relax. And we're going to give everyone who has something that they want to share an opportunity to do so. Karachem av al banim, richem Adonai al yireav. Ki hu yada yitzrenu, Zachur ki afar anachnu. Tender is the Father with his children. The Lord is merciful with his worshipers. He knows how we are fashioned. He remembers that we are but dust. The days of humankind are as grass. We flourish as a flower in the field. The wind passes over it, and it is gone, and no one can recognize where it grew. But the Lord's compassion for God's worshipers, the Lord's righteousness to children's children remain, age after age, unchanging. And I'm going to share one other psalm. The psalmists somehow expressed for us the feelings that we have today, even though they were writing so many thousands of years ago. And somehow this psalm feels like it was written for Marshall. The 15th Psalm. Adonai, mi yagur ba'ohalecha, mi yishkon b'har kodshecha. O Lord, who shall dwell in your sanctuary? Who shall abide upon your holy mountain? The one who lives with integrity, does what is right, and speaks the truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, who does no evil to his fellow man, who does not reproach his neighbor. Whoever does these things shall stand firm forever. I'm going to call on members of the family to share their feelings and memories of Marshall. First, his oldest child, Anne Luban.
It is a testament to our Father and deeply meaningful to all of us that all of you are with us today. Each of you has your own history with Dad. In the coming days and months and years, please share your memories with us. You've had experience with him that we didn't have, growing up together or in a courtroom or a classroom. And we have memories of experiences that you didn't have. When we were little, we often had parties late at night, long after Mom went to sleep. I'm sure that doesn't surprise any of you who know me, as I'm still very much a night person. We'd watch his favorite TV shows and movies with him. He loved the corny Burt Reynolds movies like Cannonball Run and Smokey and the Bandit. And we watched every episode of the original Charlie's Angels and every James Bond movie. Sometimes during those late night parties, he'd make us homemade chocolate milkshakes. He'd take out the blender, scoop in the ice cream, pour in the milk and the chocolate sauce, and flip the switch. But inevitably, he'd forget to put or hold the top on. Right? And the blender would explode, the ice cream, chocolate sauce, milk, everywhere. I remember laughing and laughing, and I never remember anybody cleaning up. Sorry, Mom. Growing up, Mom made our lunches and our dinners and our breakfasts and did our laundry and did the shopping and so on and so on. But one day, I remember Dad made lunch. Maybe Mom was in the hospital after giving birth to Danny, but he knew that Mom always wrote notes on the napkin that she put into my lunch bag for school. And so he wrote a note, took a napkin, wrote a note, in that big scrawling, left-handed handwriting of his, "I love you, love Daddy, XXOO." Put it in the brown paper bag with my lunch. Except that he used a magic marker on the napkin and put it right next to the sandwich bread, not thinking it would bleed through. But I no longer remember what he made me for lunch that day, but I remember he wrote me the note. In addition to his love of TV and movies, Dad shared his love of reading, was always giving me books to read, and I think many of you as well, from authors as different from one another as Anne Rice to Daniel Silva, to his favorite texts of Pirkei Avot. And he shared his love of ping pong. We played in the basement of our house with the low ceilings and minimal space to move around, but that didn't stop him from delivering his famous, powerful shalom serve. It got me every time. He loved playing ping pong with Mom, with us, and even more knowing that Mark and Adam have the same kind of fierce ping pong rivalry that he had with his cousin Harvey. Dad always said that his father had always said that he was stronger when his family was around him. And that was certainly true for Dad as well. Nothing was more important to him than his family, his parents and his foster parents, his brother, his sister, his aunts, uncles, cousins, us kids, and our spouses, his grandchildren, and of course, my mom. As she tells it, she met him when she was 14, knew by 16 she was going to marry him, and took her 3 years to convince him. And he couldn't have been happier. They celebrated 60 years this summer, a milestone that was incredibly important to both of them and truly so inspiring. Mom, you went above and beyond in caring for Dad, particularly these last years. He never took it for granted, and neither do we. Thank you. Dad's favorite short story was by I.L. Peretz. It's a story about the rabbi of Nemirov who would disappear just before the time for prayers in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah. His followers believed he was in heaven, advocating for the community. But a non-believer doubted this, hid under the rabbi's bed at night, and followed him when the rabbi got up early, dressed as a commoner, and went out. He followed him to the home of a poor old sick woman and watched the rabbi give her firewood that he had chopped down and carried and light her stove. The non-believer became a devoted disciple of the rabbi, and thereafter, whenever others said the rabbi ascended to heaven, the former non-believer would say, if not higher. You'll hear more from others today about all that Dad did for others in his lifelong fight for justice and to treat all people with dignity. Dad, for all that you gave me and for all that you've done for so many others, it's time to rest in heaven, if not higher.
Thank you, Anne, for those words. And speaking for the grandsons, we'll call on Adam Gadiel.
Oh boy. First, expressing my and all of our gratitudes for all of you being here. I know that as he reached out and touched each one of our homes and our hearts, he magically was able to do so for everyone here and many, many more outside these walls. Papa, here's what I know. I'm feeling sad and scared and lonely. A tragic man's life, my grandfather, is finished. But I'm also feeling happy. Happy that you're finally at peace. Happy that we can rest knowing that you're comfortable and no longer in pain. Happy that you'll be reunited with your better half, something that you taught Mark and I to appreciate so much. I also feel thankful that we were able to have a final last time with you, to see you at Uncle Danny's for that final movie night, and to hear you say you were proud of me and the work I was doing, and to ask to hear my speech, one that I had given months before and had told him a few times. I'm thankful that your children surrounded you on your final moments, and you were swimming in the one concept that you preached to me and all of my cousins since the day we were born: family. What you created, the small, personal, beautiful, tight community of family who would come and gather in your crowded living room on Hanukkah, or visit you at the office, or ride around in your walker, is something that so many strive to have. And you, along with the help of your endless supporter, Nana, instilled these intense family values in each one of us. Everyone always used to say that Mark and I were like Uncle Danny and Michael in our relationship, but I've always believed that we were more like you and Herbie. Your energies with each other were what defined me and Mark's bond, and what created the everlasting and meaningful closeness that we have. Calling each other every day, yelling at each other nonstop, arguing with no end. This is what built Mark and I. Teaching each one of us chess, a game that you had loved your entire life and found decent success in. And wanting each of us, from Becca to Scarlett, to discover it ourselves and watch us come to life playing with you. This created our love of play, and you challenge us to think critically and think closely, skills that would benefit us forever. And finally, your infinite stories. Now, while there were some that you retold so often, Mark and I could literally act them out in song and dance in front of you all right now. They were filled with values and knowledge that helped you create this legacy that we all now follow. And all you wanted was to pass those on to us. I continually quote your losing of a cannon in the war in the AZA exec meeting that you ran in the back of a history class. Oh, or the fact that you and your debate partner never lost a single match all throughout law school until the championships where you got second. These stories, while whimsical and wild, were all centered around the values that you wanted us to know: compassion, integrity, genuine kindness, and hard work. The legacy that you are leaving behind is one of immense importance to not just myself, but to everyone you knew. Your work in public defense, a field you so devoted yourself to, was revolutionized by your work. I still stand in awe of the magnitude of that statement. Even more so, your life moving from challenging conditions to becoming one of the most appreciative and empathetic people I ever knew is one of the greatest stories of perseverance ever. So these things I know that I, and all my cousins and future, hopefully children to come, must learn to continue. We know that your history lives in each one of us, and you continue to live on as we spend every day channeling and spreading you. So good night, Papa. Maybe now you and Herbie can finally solve the mind's greatest math problem. What are the odds of flipping a coin and it landing on its edge? Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Adam, for the sharing and the eloquence. You're a worthy heir. And now, I'm going to ask Danny, his best son, to share Marshall's life with us.
Hope you're all comfortable. Dugma, the Hebrew word for example, is how I would define my father in one word. Example of how to live, how to work, how to perform each of life's roles with great intention. As a son, he revered his parents. I remember how devoted he was to his father, who lived in the Jewish Home for the Blind. He was equally devoted to his foster parents, his Aunt Rose and Uncle Al, who took him in after his mother died. I watched and learned as he set the example. As the oldest child, when their mother died, he looked after his brother and sister since he was 11. He helped keep the family close, even though they lived in different homes. My parents let my Uncle Herb live with us for 10 years while Judy, Ann, and I shared a bedroom. My father talked to his sister every Sunday night for an hour or more, and even though she lived in California, they remained so close. He stayed close to so many cousins as well, including from his foster family. As a nephew, he had incredible patience as he provided support for his Aunt Sarah, who suffered from mental illness, and his Aunt Mildred when she was a widow. I watched and learned as he set the example. As a student, he loved academics. He went to the University of Chicago at 16, and while getting his bachelor's there, he also got a degree in Hebrew letters from Spertus College. He then went to University of Chicago Law School. He loved U of C. He instilled the importance of a liberal arts education and lifetime of learning in all of us. He gave me great advice when I went off to college. Always go to class. And he revered his teachers. Never forgot those whose shoulders he stood on. And I listened as he set the example. As a soldier, he did his duty to his country and enlisted in the Army. Went to officer training school, and even though he lost a cannon, a tale he loved to tell, he came out a lieutenant. Lived on an Army base with my mom when they were just married. He was a patriot of the United States and an ardent supporter of the Constitution. As a husband, he was not perfect. He had a bad temper, but he adored my mom since she was 18 and never once said a bad word about her. Not once. He only spoke her praises. You know Pat, she's no slouch. How smart she is, what a good person she is, how she's the best looking of all our friends. He deeply loved her, respected her, and was beyond grateful for how she cared for him these last years. As an uncle, he loved his niece and nephew. He cared and was interested in their lives and was as proud of them as their parents are. As a father, he set the example. He was not always around. He worked and traveled a lot, but when he was home, he was 100% present. He never judged us. He taught us to think. He taught us to be kind. He taught us to see the good in everyone and that you cannot truly know someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. For example, he had a case where the person was guilty of murder. However, when the defendant was a child, his father hooked him up to a homemade electric chair. So no wonder the guy turned out violent. And it was a very important lesson to understand that where people came from makes them who they are. And though they need to be held accountable for their actions, we need to be compassionate because it's not always their fault. He taught us to be the bigger person. He was selfless at home, whatever everyone else wanted to eat, whatever everyone else wanted to watch, wherever everyone else wanted to go. And he would drive you. His driving was terrifying, but he was always willing to drive anyone anywhere. He understood me in ways that I did not always realize. Once when I was in college, he told someone how I'm a very serious person, and he added, he even parties seriously. When I was in high school and college, I would come home at 3 a.m. and raid the fridge, often eating sour cream and bread, a concoction I learned from him. And my dad would come plopping downstairs and sit and talk to me. I was not that talkative. But he was undeterred and did it every time for years. When I called him at work, he always took the call. He was a huge softie, cried all the time. When I was an adolescent, I thought it was weak, but now I find myself the same way. A tender moment between my wife and daughter brings tears to my eyes. As a papa, his 7 grandchildren adored him. He taught them tic-tac-toe and checkers, made them laugh, and it didn't matter what they did, he was so proud of all of them. He was a thoughtful and loyal friend to many. He was still in touch with his grammar school pals until the end. He was quick to shout out his friends' accomplishments. He maintained friendships from every part of his life, and I watched him set the example of how to stay in touch, not hold grudges, and always support the people you care about. As a teacher, he was a professor of criminal justice at UIC, and he taught for many years at Kent Law School. One of his proudest awards, of many awards, one of his proudest was the Silver Circle Award from UIC students who nominated him Teacher of the Year. It may have had something to do with the fact that he gave them all A's, but his classes were always full. As a community member, he was active in the community, served on the board of the synagogue, volunteered, and was an active participant in local politics as a member of the Democratic Party, even ran for U.S. Congress in 1980. He was a philanthropist, and with my mom, gave to dozens of charities. He could not turn anyone down, even the Fraternal Order of Police, even the wives of the Fraternal Order of Police. If someone reached out their hand, my father put something in it. And I watched as he set that example. As a colleague, he was relentless in his praise for his partners in the fight for fair representation for the poor. He was not the first one there in the morning, but he was the last to leave at night. He told tales of how he and Jim Doherty would take a break from working on a case to go see a movie to clear their minds, and then come back and work more. My mom always said it never felt like work to him. Maybe that's because he was at the movies. He loved being in the courtroom. He loved building the strategy of a case. He loved how American jurisprudence is based on a series of cases. And he made meaningful contributions to the case law of the state of Illinois and the United States. He appeared before the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times. First case ever won in the U.S. Supreme Court by the Cook County Public Defender Office. The case was an informer who worked for the state would not reveal his name in the trial. And they won on the Sixth Amendment right to confront your accuser. Second was Illinois versus Richard Speck, the case where they coined the term mass murder. They won an appeal to reduce the sentence from death to life in prison on grounds that everyone in the jury who was opposed to the death penalty was removed from jury selection. And In re Galt, where as amicus, Marshall sat at the counsel table and answered a question, helping change the law to provide the right to counsel for indigent juveniles. And he spent the last 14 years of his career meaningfully contributing to the fight against the improper administering of the death penalty in Illinois, resulting in the commutation of all 160 death row inmates to life in prison just before his retirement. As a leader, he was generous with his coaching and support. So many lawyers looked up to him, loved working for him, told me he was their mentor. He always took accountability for the work and gave everyone else the credit. He's been recognized by his peers, and I'm quoting Larry Benner here, as the father of the public defender movement in America. His legacy is that with many colleagues, including several with us today, he helped get funding and develop trainings for public defender offices around the country, set standards for public defenders to ensure equitable representation for those who cannot afford counsel, such as the number of cases each lawyer should handle, and making sure there are social workers and psychological evaluations. And he inspired a generation of lawyers to fight for the rights of indigent defendants. He also championed the promotion of women and people of color in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and I watched and learned as he set the example for bringing people together, listening, doing the right thing even when no one is looking, and always defending people, especially those who cannot defend themselves. Despite being a workaholic, he absolutely found time to relax. He ended every night on the couch in front of the TV, loved westerns and action movies, and he loved taking us to the movies. He had a great sense of humor. He was a spectacular storyteller. Definitely embellished all of them, and they were entertaining even though you heard them 1,000 times. And he was a skilled joke teller. He would make you laugh with even the dumbest jokes because of his amazing delivery. Good yontif, Pontiff. I didn't inherit that delivery. He had a keen interest in world affairs, loved reading periodicals like the Christian Science Monitor, loved the Christian Science Monitor, and Foreign Affairs magazine. Discussing politics was standard fare at our dinner table, as was the Bill of Rights. He was not the most active person and not as big of a sports fan as my mom, but he loved to swim and play basketball, played on the JV team at U of C, and was an avid ping pong player, which he passed on to his kids and grandkids. And Josh is a great ping pong player too, by the way. He was a hat guy, loved cowboy hats and sailor caps. He was proud of his own eating prowess and that of his brother, father, and any other big eater. He lived to the ripe old age of 87 on a strict diet of hot dogs, pizza, milkshakes, corned beef, and salami, and his favorite, lamb chops. Most importantly, my father was a kind, compassionate, and generous man. He was a scholar, and his favorite text was Pirkei Avot. One of his favorite passages was, "Who is rich? He who is happy with his lot." He lived that by example. He was rich, and we're all richer for knowing him.
Penny, you spoke for all of us. Next, we're going to have what's being called a musical interlude. We're going to hear from Mark Luban, Rachel Luban, and Henry Gadiel, some of his best and favorite grandchildren.
I just want to say a quick couple seconds.
If you can, when you're speaking, just speak into the microphone so that people.
I'll just speak louder. Hi, everyone. Really quick before we begin, just want to say something in order to make sure everyone understands what we're seeing. Nana loves rainbows. From her balcony in Skokie, Nana said she could see rainbows all the time. And whenever the rain would stop, she would run to the window, Marshall, Marshall, look at the rainbow. And whether he may or may not have looked depended upon, of course, whether he was sleeping at the current moment. Papa knew how much Nana loved rainbows. And every time there was a rainbow, Nana and Papa looked at it together and shared that moment. He passed away at 2:30 p.m. on Monday. At that moment, Auntie Judy and her friend Laura were in the car driving Auntie Judy back to Michigan, and they saw 4 separate rainbows.
Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told that some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered when wished on a morning star? Somebody thought of that and someone believed it, and look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing, and what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic.
Have you been half asleep and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Is it the sweet sound that calls the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something that I'm supposed to be.
Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La 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 la.
I have to say, they obviously inherited the gene that came down through Herb, not the one that came down through Marshall.
Also, and for those who are wondering, this guitar was one of Uncle Herbie's guitars.
Now, I'm going to ask the youngest of Paul's children, Evelyn Liskin, to share a poem and her thoughts.
No, I said, it's up to you.
Thank you all for coming here today. I know Marshall would appreciate it. We all do. Here's a poem that I wrote to you, Marshall. My beloved brother Marshall, I had hoped this day would never come. I will miss you forever. I can't imagine a day in this world without you. My heart is broken into pieces. But time marches on. We cannot control our destiny, but what I can think about is my love and admiration for you, my dear brother. You were a wonder to me and a wonderful person. No kinder soul has ever walked this earth. You took care of me when I was small and all through the years as I grew tall. You watched over Dad, Herb, Aunt Rose, Uncle Al, and me, and your beloved wife, Pat, your children, grandkids, your adoring family. You extended your kindness well beyond taking corned beef sandwiches at midnight to Sarah, our aunt, and moving her multiple times, never saying the phrase, I can't. You were the most selfless person in thought and deed. I don't know why it's a little stuck. I will start again at where I left off. You were the most selfless person in thought and deed, and professionally a giant in the courtroom with cases to plead. An adored professor, your students would say. Marshall, your ability in life took you quite a long way. You've won many awards through the years, one can see. But the greatest award you deserve is for your devotion to family. Rest in peace, my brother. You are loved and adored by all. Sadly, you have left us for Hashem's greater call. Again, I say, dear brother, may you forever rest in peace, knowing that my love for you will never cease. Your memory will remain deep in my heart. You will be with me forever and never depart. Dearest brother Marshall, sadly, I bid you adieu, but remember how much I will always love you. I don't know how to ever thank you, Marshall, for everything you did for me my whole life. You were the most wonderful brother that anyone could ever have. Now, I also need to tell you my son, Michael Liskin, can't be here today, and he asked me to read this on his behalf. He wrote to Uncle Marshall. Marshall Hartman was the embodiment of what it means to live ethically and for the common good for all of us. He shared in our successes and failures with the biggest heart imaginable. This is who I call a great man. At the Shiva, I will share the impact he had on me and my family. Today, I will reveal the impact he had on the world. The Pirkei Avot is the part of the Mishnah that compiles many ancient rabbinic writings about ethics. My Uncle Marshall passed this book of wisdom on to me from my great-great-grandfather's library. Pirkei Avot teaches not learning but doing is the main thing, which is to say, what good is knowing the right thing without putting it into action? Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman did this. Pirkei Avot teaches us to slow down enough to listen deeply to the wisdom of those that came before us. Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman gave us this. Pirkei Avot teaches us on three things the world exists: on truth, on justice, and on peace. Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman lived this. My Uncle Marshall spoke will to power, challenging the status quo. He set an example of integrity for himself and others that will ring through the ages. And this is no hyperbole. Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman held us accountable to this. Pirkei Avot teaches us to make the world a better place. Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman created structures to ensure this. My Uncle Marshall made me proud to be Jewish, proud to share in his lineage, and got me ready to debate and live by this wisdom of the ancestors. Rabbi Hillel asked, "If not now, when?" Uncle Marshall replied, "Right now." Marshall Hartman taught us this. Marshall Hartman loved us all enough to be this. On behalf of my wife, Rebecca, my sons, Emmett and Zev, and my daughter, Adina, we love you, Uncle Marshall. This week, I told him how important it was that he set his example for how to be as a human being, how to live, how to treat others, and what this meant to me, my life, and my young kids. I reminded him how much it mattered, what he stood for, and what a difference it made. And I told him that I love him, and he heard me. And my wife got to share how much we will miss him. Marshall, now, one last goodbye from your sister. I will always, always love you. Okay, thank you. Oh, sure.
Thank you, Evie, for sharing those feelings, thoughts, and words. And now, Marshall's favorite younger daughter, Judy Gadio.
So as I considered what to share with you all today, I really had a difficult time putting into words what I wanted to say. And those who know me that know that that is not typical for me. So instead, I'd like to share pieces of words that others have written. My dad's dear cousin, J Rose, who lives in California, shared this with our family. We have often heard the phrase, a life well lived. For the vast majority of people, this does not apply. But to my cousin, Marshall Hartman, it is truly descriptive of his time on our earth. To me, he was not only a cousin, but a mentor, a friend, and a wonderful person to be around. Marshall had a sharp sense of humor, and I will never forget his dedication to our family when he rented a convertible Cadillac, picked up his father, Paul Hartman, and drove 3 straight days to be at my bar mitzvah. The world is a better place because Marshall was here. May you rest in eternal peace, my cousin, knowing the wonderful legacy you have left behind. God bless your soul. And from Clay Springer, my parents' godson, who lives in Thailand. Right now, all I can think of is to say thank you. Thank you for helping me be thankful and know there's a profound duty to help those less fortunate than me. Thank you for helping me understand that humility and greatness go hand in hand. Thank you for showing me confidence to live without fear. Thank you for teaching me how to be a good father and to have a legacy in your children. Thank you for giving me the tenacity to never give up. Thank you for letting me see that youth can always be present. Thank you for living a life on your own terms. Thank you for letting me know that I'm loved without condition. You have always been a reminder of possibilities in life, that adversity is to be embraced and vanquished, that love is the most powerful force in the universe. You are a lion. This past Tuesday was September 21st, my darling Henry's 12th birthday, and also World Gratitude Day. So I will end my remarks by expressing my deepest gratitude. For my faith that allowed me to sit with my dad this past weekend and hold sacred space as he transitioned to another realm. Gratitude for all of us who had the courage and grace to let him go. Gratitude for all of those waiting on the other side with open hands and hearts to welcome him. Gratitude for the vision of him running light and free with a spirit that's so much stronger than his physical body. Gratitude for the rainbows that filled the sky and guided me back home to Michigan. Gratitude for the beautiful gift that we received by having him with us on earth for 87 years. Gratitude for the knowing that love has infinite forms and his love lives in all of us. And mostly, gratitude for the blessing of him loving me and of being his daughter. May his memory be for a blessing and his presence always be felt surrounding us.
Thank you, Judy, for sharing your words and feelings and those of the others who shared. Finally, I'm going to call on Rebecca Gadiel to speak for the granddaughters.
My Nana always says that she has the best family. It's true, but what she doesn't always point out is that is a direct reflection of her and my papa. My papa loved us all so very deeply, and it is that love that he had for us all that resonates through us today and keeps us bonded together. The values he worked to instill in his children, and by extension, us, his grandchildren, family, kindness, justice, humor, has shaped us into the people we are today. My grandpa built an incredible legacy, and I see the threads of him that run through each one of us. Mark's deep commitment to his family, and in particular to his siblings. My brother Adam's love of learning and knowledge. Rachel's sense of justice and capacity to love everyone no matter who they are. Josh's deep mind and musing questions, Henry's love of jokes and playful spirit, Scarlett's love of basketball and swimming, and for me, my deep intuition, empathy, and desire to help the world around me. To conclude, I would like to read this poem my Nana asked to be read today. She told us last night that this is the poem that most strongly exemplifies my grandfather's life for her. It wasn't so much about when he was born or when he died, but what he did in between. And what he did in between is change the world. The poem is titled The Dash Poem. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on her tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth, and now only those who loved him know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live and love, how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel. Be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering that this special dash might only last a little while. So while your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? I think my papa would be. I know we all are.
Thank you, Rebecca. And that poem that many of us have heard before takes on special meaning when we think about it in terms of Marshall. The words of Job: when a wise man dies, how can he be replaced? There's a source for silver and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth, and from the stone copper is smelted. But where can wisdom be found? And where is the place of understanding? When a wise man dies, how can he be replaced? Marshall was a deeply passionate person, and he used his passion to great effect in his personal life, in his legal arguments, and to fuel his own energy to achieve the great accomplishments that we have heard about, and many that have not been mentioned this morning. His greatest passion was for justice. And as the Torah and the thoughts of the rabbis expressed in Pirkei Avot make clear, justice must be carried out for those who have the least standing in life and in the courts: the widow, the orphan, the non-citizen, and the poor, and those whom society discriminates against. We have heard how jurisprudence in this country has been changed through Marshall's efforts in bringing the defense establishment up to a standard where there is some balance with the prosecutorial side. For lawyers throughout the country, they have turned to Marshall's interpretation of the effect of Supreme Court decisions in order to apply or maneuver through the fallout of these cases. What shaped Marshall? He was born 87 years ago and raised initially on the west side of Chicago in a loving family that soon included his brother Herb and his sister Evie. His father Paul developed failing eyesight, and his beloved mother Anne died when Marshall was 10 or 11 years old. Unable to take care of them himself, Paul had the insight to place them in the Douglas Park Day and Night Nursery, an enlightened and nurturing orphan home. Marshall requested to stay in the younger division so that he could stay with Herb and Evie, and looked out for them as he did for the rest of his life. They also sent him and Herb to the Hebrew parochial school. A fellow student of that school who I encountered just recently and who I asked if he knew Marshall Hartman because I mistook his name. He said, "Marshall Hartman? He was the smartest student in the school." A couple who were on the board of the orphanage, Al and Rose Wernick, who had no children of their own, were so impressed with him that they requested to become his foster parents. Adoption was not an option because his father Paul remained a caring and loving parent. Herb and Evie also became foster children to warm, caring foster parents. But the Wernicks also worked to keep the whole family in close touch, as did Marshall and their father Paul, for the rest of their lives. We have heard much of what happened, but there are two special aspects of Marshall's life that I think should be mentioned. The first is his deep and abiding connection and contribution to the mid-century Chicago Jewish community. From high school on, he lived at that point with the Wernicks in South Shore. He was a participant and leader in the Jewish community, with the founding of USY, with his participation in AZA. Marshall attended and eventually directed the Chicago Board of Jewish Education camps, Avodah, called in those days Avoda, and the Sharon Institute. He was also appointed head of the youth program at Southside Hebrew Congregation by Rabbi Maurice Clears. And he helped generations of Jewish youth to find excitement and involvement in Jewish social engagement, learning, worship, and connection. He built a staff of experts in informal learning, drama, dance. Anybody who knew Marshall knew somebody else had to teach the dance. And social interaction, leading, among other things, to his finding his lifelong partnership and love in Pat Hennig. And the development of this outstanding group of people, his family, who have shared with us today. I have to say that I am one of those people. The other aspect of Marshall is what he did personally for these people, including for me, who grew up under his leadership and friendship at Southside Hebrew Congregation and in the Chicago Jewish community. Marshall not only had, I was going to say great, I really should say supreme confidence in his own abilities. He let us know that he had the same confidence in our abilities and inspired us to live up to his confidence in us. He did this as a leader, a friend, a mentor, a colleague. If you look at the Chicago Jewish Funerals website, you'll see some of the encomiums from the people he helped make. And he was, as Danny said, a dugma his whole life. He let us know that we were his best friend, colleague, child, grandchild. And we grew into that challenge. His best wife and co-creator of this family was Pat. And she, among her many other accomplishments, made the home and the life that allowed Marshall to be and to do what he did. She was always there and gave him the support that allowed him, especially with all his recent challenges, to continue to make his contributions right up to now. Yehei Zichro Baruch. May the memories of all the wonderful times, family celebrations, seders, Thanksgivings, break the fast gatherings, continue to be a blessing to carry us through this time. And let us say, Amen. Our God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our Redeemer, 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go while you endure forever. We are always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life, trusting in your love and in your judgments. The mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding. We are perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those whom we love. Grant solace and comfort unto those who mourn. May our lives together help to sustain us and add to the blessing which is ours in the memory of the life of our beloved Marshall. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside the still waters and in the green pastures, you, O Lord, are our shepherd. Be our strength and our shield, our stay and our comfort through all our days. And let us say, Amen. I'm going to ask you now to rise, because we are now currently in the midst of the holiday and holy day of Sukkot. There is a special prayer that we say in place of the traditional El Malei Rachamim that expresses the same thoughts, and I'll share that now. Elohas Selichot, Chanun V'Rachum, Erech Apayim V'Rav Chesed, Hamtsei chaparat pesha v'hakravat yesha, umenucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina b'malot kadoshim u'tahorim, kazohar harakia mazhirim, et ishmat Moshe Yehuda ben Pesach v'Chasyelea shehalach le'olamo. Ana bal harachamim zachralo letova kol zechuyotav v'tzidkotav ba'artzot hachayim. Uftach lo sha'arei tzedek v'ora, sha'arei chemla v'chanina. Beseter knafecha astirehu le'olamim, utzror bitzror hachayim et nishmato, Adonai hu nachlato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar, Amen. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Marshall Hartman, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed and was an example of, a dugma for all of us in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. The Lord is his portion. May he rest in peace. And let us say,
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Waldheim Cemetery located in Forest Park. For Shiva information, please look at the service folder for the days and locations of where they're sitting. Please note that the family has requested that only fully vaccinated adults pay the respects in person, and that all adults and children wear masks at all indoors. There will be ample outdoor space at both homes. Memorial contributions in his memory to JCFS, the Illinois Innocence Project, or the charity of your choice would be appreciated. Please note all that information is on the service folder, and for those of you who are joining us online, please go to the funeral home's website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing many of the cars with a flag that will be affixed to the top portion of your car. We'll have a car in the back of the funeral procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. And for your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving in a procession. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers when I call your name. Please stand next to his casket. Aaron Gadiel, Michael Lubin, Lindsay Hartman, Mark Lubin, Adam Gadiel, Rachel Lubin, Josh Lubin, and Henry Gadiel. This time I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Marshall J. Hartman from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars. Please keep in mind that to go to your cars if you're going to the cemetery or not, immediately the family's not going to come out of the funeral home into the limousines until all the areas cleared out. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you wish, you can also exit the front door so there's not a crowd on this side.